let's get started here. If you can, in the chat, let me know what is one reason that you're here. Like what would you really like to get out of this presentation with regards to anxiety? What called you to be here? Is it something that may be going on, or just curious to hear why you're here with us today? If you can share in the chat, that would be greatly appreciated. And if not, that's okay too. And I just saw somebody else come in. Okay. Okay, I got no responses, which is fine. So let me start here with the presentation. I'm going to share my screen and get started here. Share screen. Okay. And view that. Okay, so hopefully, Ms. Strother, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see this? Perfect, great. So again, thank you all for being here. This is recording, I hope, yes. So anxiety. A lot of us, even for me growing up, there was a lot of stigma around anxiety, stigma around having it, and so I just want to mention that traditionally we viewed anxiety as it being a mental illness. As I often heard growing up in my family that, oh, you're crazy, there's something wrong with you, it's all in your head, get over it. And then there's always, for me, been a very deep shame about having anxiety and thinking that it's not normal, thinking that it's not a good thing. But in reality, what I've come to understand here, let me move on to the next slide, is that anxiety is simply an alarm. And let me just talk a lot about this, is that when we experience anxiety, the sensation of feeling overwhelmed, of shakiness, maybe even our palms are sweating, maybe we might have a headache, maybe some of us have a lot of gut issues where we can't digest food, or our stomach is hurting. I know my daughter, when she was experiencing anxiety at the age of 3, always complained about her tummy hurting. And in fact, we landed ourselves in the ER because one night her tummy was hurting so much, she kept rocking herself. And we were like, we need to take her in because something's going on. And so what happens is that anxiety is an alarm trying to alert us that there is something dangerous. So there's a threat in our environment, whether it's real or whether it's something that's perceived. And so anxiety is really here to tell us, to protect us, to say, you need to do something. You need to run away. You need to get ready to fight. You need to maybe shut down because maybe you can't fight this danger. And so it comes to us in this alarm in the body. And when it comes to us in our mind, we start to have racing thoughts. We start to worry. We start to be thinking over and over again about worst case scenarios because our mind is just trying to protect us. And so I'm not going to go too much in detail here about the brain, but please understand as parents is that when our children, and even when we are going through anxiety, what happens is that the part of our brain, which is called the prefrontal cortex, that's the part of our brain where we have access to thinking, where we have access to making decisions, where we have access to doing our homework, all those important skills that we need to be successful students. That part of the brain completely shuts down. And we're now on a survival mode. We are literally trying to ensure that we're safe. We're looking out for threats. We're looking out to see, how can I make sure I stay protected? And so this is so important for us as parents to understand, because sometimes our first instinct when our child is going through anxiety, we may not even label it that, is that we want to ask questions. We want to, what's going on? What's wrong? How can I help? And all those things they can't even answer or give us feedback because they're literally in the reptilian brain, the oldest part of our brain, which is a purpose is just to make sure that we are safe. And so when I talk about anxiety as the alarm, literally in the brain, in this part of the brain, the second part of the brain, is where that alarm gets turned off, and it telling us there's a danger. And I'm going to talk about where those dangers come from. So here, literally what happens is we perceive a danger, whether it's something we see, maybe it's something we smell, maybe it's a touch, maybe it's something we hear. And when we perceive that danger, a signal goes into our amygdala, that second part of the brain, and it turns on the alarm. And that's where we start to feel a lot of different symptoms of anxiety. And like I said, that part of the brain shuts down, and then it leads to a lot of symptoms. Some of you may or may not be aware of these. When we are constantly on survival mode, our alarm is constantly on, we get a lot of things that happen here. We stop thinking clearly. We continue to worry. Maybe some of our students are having a hard time sleeping at night. They're constantly maybe on the video games as a way to distract. They're not getting enough rest. Our brain is constantly having these thoughts of predicting things that might happen just so that we can stay safe. In the case of my daughter, who at the time was 3, 4, she had a lot of bedwetting. She did a lot of rocking of herself, scratching her nails. Like I said earlier, a lot of stomach aches. And if you start to notice, our breathing is very shallow when we are in a state of anxiety. It's only at the chest level because our body is thinking we're in danger. So it's getting itself ready to prepare to fight, to run, to flee, whatever it needs to do to take care of ourselves. So these are all symptoms that show up in the long term when we are constantly in a state of survival. We're constantly in a state of feeling like there's some danger in our environment. And so what I want to mention, this for me was huge, is that anxiety is actually very normal. And there's nothing wrong with the person experiencing anxiety. It's just trying to protect you. What is not normal is when it's a chronic state of anxiety. And that's what I'm going to talk about here. So if you think about this iceberg, let me go back. What we tend to see in our students is the iceberg outside of the water, right? The behaviors. We tend to see the fighting, the yelling, maybe the biting of the nails, maybe of being on the TV all day long or on the phone, or not being able to do the homework at night, or needing to sleep a lot, or watching TV. These are all the behaviors we see, but we don't understand them. Some of these behaviors can include, worry. It can include wetting the bed, as I mentioned it. It can include insomnia. It could also include, on the other end, a lot of sleeping, like our children get home from school and they just want to sleep 10 hours or so. Avoidance, being in their room all day. Like I said, nail biting, having a lack of focus. And what we need to understand as parents is that underneath what the behavior that we are seeing is that there's this internal alarm for our children that is constantly being turned on. And when we understand what that alarm is, when we get to the root of that, that's when we can truly start to heal the anxiety that shows up. And so right now, a lot of our kids are showing up with anxiety for various reasons. One, we've just come out of staying home for almost a year and a half, doing school on a computer, being at home. A lot of our students had responsibilities taking care of younger siblings, perhaps even needing to work. And I'm talking about high school students here. In addition to doing their homework, taking care of their responsibilities. So a lot of them, from those that I've spoken to, and I get a lot of students in my office who have a lot of anxiety, a lot of them even have panic attacks in here, is that their system is just so overwhelmed. They're stressed out. And so the idea that they're going to fail, that they're not going to meet their responsibilities, that their grades are not going to be the grades they want to have, that they're going to disappoint their parents, a lot of that is this energy, this fear inside that is just constantly there. And when it becomes so much, think about if this is water and it's filling up. When it fills up and the body can no longer contain it, it spills out. And so this is where our students start to have panic attacks because they can no longer contain all of the emotions and feelings that they've been stuffing down unconsciously for various reasons, right? Maybe a lot of my students will say, you know, I can't share this because, and this is not to shame or blame parents because I've been there myself, is that I can't share this because I'm going to get yelled at, or I'm going to get punished, or my phone's going to get taken away, or I'm not going to be allowed to go do X, Y, Z. And so what happens is that our students feel that they can't really share what they're going through, and they're filling up and stuffing up all these emotions to the point that their body really can't handle it anymore. And there's a panic attack. And a panic attack is really just trying to release some of that water to make space, right? Some of the emotions. And they go into full-blown panic attack. I've seen it. They start to hyperventilate, they start to shake, they start to sweat. And again, it's this idea, this fear, this worry about, I am not meeting up to the expectations of themselves or of their parents or loved ones. And so, oops, I need to go forward. So in order to really heal this anxiety, I really believe that we have to get to the root causes of what's creating this fear, this perceived danger. And a lot of it is becoming aware of that alarm that we don't see and bringing it up to our attention where we can see it, so that we can start to allow our children to voice whatever it is they're feeling. And sometimes it's just to feel whatever they've been stuffing down into their body in a space where they feel they're going to be heard, in a space where they're going to feel like they're not going to be judged, in a space where they feel like they're not going to be punished. And even to a larger degree, what I hear from students is that I'm not going to disappoint my parents. That is a huge one for our students. It's all the time it comes up. And so what I want us to start thinking and kind of changing our view on anxiety is that it's not that we're anxious. It's just that this alarm keeps coming up. You know, it's not, I'm not feeling anxious. It's like, I'm just feeling an alarm, right? That's coming up. And so when we're in anxiety, our mind starts to have thoughts. That's how anxiety shows up with our mind. In our body, it shows up with these alarms where we feel these sensations and the body is trying to protect us. And so the alarms, this is very important. I think it really helped me understand where my alarms were coming from and where my daughter's alarms were coming from. A lot of these alarms have to do with what I would consider abuse. So it could be in the form of physical abuse. It could be in the form of emotional abuse, which was a lot of my case growing up. I've come to understand that sometimes emotional abuse is something we don't talk a lot about. We tend to see trauma and abuse as like, you know, hitting a child, spanking a child, right? It being physical. But a lot for me, I'm about to turn 40 and I've had a lot of trauma, but we wouldn't think of emotional abuse as trauma. And what I mean by that is being able to be seen as a child, heard as a child, feeling like my mother was there to connect with me. And I don't blame my mother. My mother was just so busy working, so busy trying to make ends meet. And so as being the oldest child in my family and having 3 younger brothers, in many ways, I had to grow up much faster to help my mother out. And because I saw my mother stressed out as a child, I dare not add any more stress to her plate. I dare not ask for anything because she was already stressed out. And a lot of my students will say that, like, my mom's stressed out, I can't share this with her. My mom is working, you know? And so there's a lot of emotional, and I don't even like the word abuse because it's not like the parent is intentionally trying to abuse a child, but there's a lot of emotional disconnection there where we don't feel safe to share emotions. There could also be sexual abuse. So this is the alarms, the word alarms under the A, it could be any of these 3 types of abuse. For the letter L, it could be loss. And so many of our students right now are going through a lot of loss because of COVID. There's a death of a family member. It could be the loss of our parents being together because they're separating. It could be the loss of just going to school as we knew was our normal, right? It could be grieving the way things were before COVID and now, right? So all these losses, when we don't fully feel them, fully understand them, or able to talk about them, we end up kind of holding all these emotions in, and that's where the alarm starts to ring. Anytime a student, I'll give you an example, one of my students is dating somebody, and the moment that my student feels like this person's gonna leave her, she's in my office having a full-blown panic attack. It's not necessarily that this person, the relationship that she's in right now, but it's a reminder of perhaps something that happened before that's reminding her of this alarm. So it could also be abandonment. That's a huge one for me. Anytime I feel like I'm going to be abandoned, my anxiety would show up. And again, this is huge because we're living in a world where, in the Bay Area especially, just to pay rent, to pay mortgage, to pay the bills, to make ends meet, we two parents have to work. Unless there's a parent that has a really good job in tech or is a CEO, our parents are working so much. And that means that our children are not getting that quality time with parents, not because parents don't want to, but because they're also stressed out. And I'm speaking from my own experience. I get home from work, and after talking to students all day, I'm tired. The last thing I want to do is think about dinner. I'm thinking about dinner and showering kids and putting them to bed, but the kids want to connect with me. And I'm so tired, so drained that I don't even have the ability to be able to be present with them. I really have to make a note and say, okay, spend intentional time with my child before they go to bed. And so this is huge when it comes to abandonment, because it's created as a child. And as we get older, it continues to show up in our life, and it'll show up as anxiety because it's unconscious. We don't even know where this anxiety is coming from, but a lot of it has to do with our childhood experiences. So the R could be rejection. A lot of our kids here, I know I have a mother that's spoken to me about her student is having a hard time going into the classroom. He's constantly out walking on campus, cannot go into the classroom. He just starts to become overwhelmed. And I reached out to mom, and mom said, well, he was bullied a lot right before COVID happened, bullied so much that she had to take her son into the ER because her son was having thoughts of hurting himself, of killing himself. And so this could be another alarm for this anxiety to show up, right? Not knowing that I'm going to be safe, or being the black sheep in the family, the one that is different, the one that's weird, the one that is not accepted, could be an alarm that we grow up with. The other M is for mature. I spoke a little bit about that as me being the firstborn of parents who immigrated to this country, parents that didn't know English. I had a lot of responsibilities growing up. And so I had high expectations of myself, and unconsciously I'm becoming aware of it now. But when I feel that I'm going to fail at something, I don't even try. I'll sabotage myself. And so I see that a lot with our students who come to the classroom and the teacher's giving a lesson, they give a project, the student may be like, unconsciously, they're not aware of it, but they're like, oh, I'm not even going to be able to do this. So I'm not even going to try, because I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm going to fail at something. So they don't try, they don't do their homework, they sabotage themselves. They don't even give themselves a chance to try. And the last one has a lot to do with shame. I see this a lot with students wanting to avoid shame, wanting to avoid being ridiculed. And so they become the class comedian in the classroom as a way to not be found out that they can't read. They're high school students and they can't read. And so they become the class comedian because there's so much shame in knowing that I'm a high school student and I can't read. And so all these can be alarms that are potentially triggering our students, triggering ourselves to experience some of this anxiety. And so again, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat box. I'm so sorry, I missed a lot. Let's see. Yes, thank you. So somebody shared that when there's a lot of anxiety present, they work through it with meditation and with prayer, and you're looking for more techniques. Yes, I'm going to give you some more. Somebody said that they are wanting to see what other parents are feeling and to see if there are things that she's missing or he's missing, as the parent can feel stress, but we can't identify that stress. Ms. Strothers said, in teenagers, I notice anxiety shows in anger a lot. Yes. And they do not know why they feel angry. Yes. Is this the fear of flight feeling? Yes, that is the fear of flight. I'll share with you a story right now, and then I'll get to the tools and to what else we can do, because I know that's what everybody's like, well, just tell me what to do. We have a student, it just happened this morning. This student lost his brother a couple weeks ago in the streets of Oakland, a murder. And before that, his parents recently divorced. And he was living in Antioch, but now he's back in Hayward because this is where his mother's family's at. So they're back here. He literally just fought two students this morning. Not sure how that happened, but we heard of it. It happened in the classroom. The teacher reached out to us, and then lashed out with another adult. Obviously, the student is in a lot of anger, a lot of pain. But beneath that anger, especially with our boys, our male students, one of the emotions that is acceptable in boys is to express anger. Like, it's okay to be angry. But below that anger, there's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of grief. There's a lot of other emotions that are there. And so a lot of our male students, and this happens with our girls too, it's okay to show grief. It's okay to show anger. But the way this anger gets shown up is through fighting, through aggressiveness, because it's okay for boys to fight. So I'm not talking about in general, right? Society saying, boy, it's okay for boys to fight. Boys can't cry, but they can fight, right? And so here's this boy who's in a lot of grief, a lot of pain. And the only way he knows how to express that is through fighting. Because again, think about this. Pain, it's energy, and it's in our bodies until we're able to release it. And again, like I said, if we don't release it and we keep holding it, it's like filling up this container with water, and the container is the body. And the body can only hold so much. And then when it's filled up, you're going to have to release it some way, whether it's through anger, whether it's through self-harming, through cutting, whether it's through yelling and being aggressive and creating situations with parents where we're constantly arguing. Or it may show up in disease because the body can no longer hold that. It may show up as in back pain, as was the case with me. I had to go to the ER because I could not get out of bed. I had so much pain in my body because I had not processed the things that I had gone through. So this is part of that fear or flight where our students need to express some of that. And so they will fight it out to release some of that emotion, some of that energy of anger to release, or they will shut down and will end up having symptoms of depression and shut down and just feel like I can't do anything. So I'm just going to freeze. I'm going to leave my body. Dissociation, where you literally leave your body because the pain is so much that you are living in a different world. You're out of your body. And so all these things are symptoms of trauma, of pain, of unprocessed emotions that we don't teach our kids. We weren't taught. I wasn't taught. My parents didn't teach me. Our schools don't teach us this. And so it shows up in the form of anxiety. It shows up in the form of depression. It shows up in the form of diseases, right? ADHD, bipolar, all these, mental diseases that, we put labels to, but in my opinion, it's a lot of unprocessed trauma that is at the root of these things. So to get to the tools here, and again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them the question, or to even unmute yourself if you are wanting to share out in person. But again, I want to make sure that you leave this presentation understanding that anxiety is just an alarm, and the body is trying to bring our attention to it, to say, look, deal with what happened when we were 3-4 years old, right? Deal with that emotion that you've been holding on to. And so a lot of this work is to connect back to our body, which is what I'm going to get to. And again, the alarm that's present now, it always comes from our past. And so what do? We have to find ways to release it, find ways to release that trapped energy in our body. And as Mr. or Mrs. Angel or Angel, I don't know, Cardenas said, is that meditation can be helpful. Sometimes it's not the first tool that may be helpful, because when we sit in meditation and we try to become silent, for some people that may be too triggering. It may be causing that alarm to go off. If we grew up in an environment where there was always a lot of talk, a lot of conversation, a lot of noise, meditating, sitting down and being quiet can take us over the edge and bring us into a panic attack. So it may not be helpful for everybody. For some people it can be, but it may not be helpful for everybody. So always check in with yourself to see what's helpful, or with your child to see what may be helpful. And so what I would recommend is to find ways to connect to the sensations that we're feeling in the body. And so the first thing for us is to be aware of what we're feeling, aware of the emotions. And what emotions are, if you look at the word emotions, it's energy in motion. But we've become so disconnected from our body. I've been there. And we live in our head. We live in this part of the mind, just trying to make sense of everything that happens, that we forget about how is my shoulders feeling? How is my upper back feeling? We hold so much tension there, so much stress there. We hold the world, we carry the world on our shoulders, right? Or how is my lower back feeling? In the morning when I wake up, do we just do a quick check into our body and to start to connect with, what is my body trying to tell me? And so for me, what I've come to understand, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience, is that until I was able to connect back to my body and feel, oh, I'm feeling tightness here. You could not do this to my shoulder without me being in pain, because it was so sensitive. Now I'm okay, but it's taking me literally 1.5 years, 2 years of being very intentional to connect back to, how does my body feel? What am I holding on to? And that is the foundation to then be able to do some of this other deeper work, whether it's therapy, whether it is meditation, whether it's breath work. Breathing, using the breath to move some of this energy out has been so helpful for me. But I realized that in order to get to all those parts, I had to really first be able to feel safe in my own body and feel safe with the feeling of anger. Anger kind of comes and just whoosh, it's like just takes over you. And being okay with being angry. I'm feeling angry right now. It's just reminding me that somebody maybe crossed my boundaries. Somebody is doing something that I don't like. So I'm trying to express that. But because as a little girl, talking about my anger was going to add too much to my parents' plate, I suppressed that anger. I held on to it because I didn't want to add to my parents' stress. And that anger has been there. And now it's coming out. And it's like, I have to find ways to in a healthy way, let it come out, whether it's doing a lot of breath work is what I'm doing now. But before that, I was really just trying to connect and feel sensations in my body. So being aware of when that alarm goes off and trying to then connect to, where am I feeling this alarm? Maybe it's my throat, because I've as a girl, in my case, I couldn't speak. And so I held a lot. I shut myself down. I quieted myself. I silenced myself. So maybe I'm feeling a lot in my throat. Maybe I'm feeling a lot in my stomach or my gut area, right? This underlying anxiety there, this danger, this overwhelm, this worry, this stress, it's there because that's where I stored it. There's our organs are tied to our emotions. So our lungs holds a lot of our grief. Our liver holds a lot of our anger. Our kidneys hold fear. And this is all Chinese medicine that I've studied. But if you start to kind of tap in a way that is safe for you, sometimes when I first started, it was too much for me and I become overwhelmed and I just shut down. So you have to kind of do this at your own pace of just connecting. And I did this through energy exercises. And I can show you one really quick that just kind of allowed me to quiet the mind, because our mind takes over, and just allow myself to connect to my body. And so I'll invite you to do that. It's called, I'm not going to do, there's 3 of them, but I'll show you the 0-point energy exercise. You're welcome to do this with me. And all it is just sitting somewhere where you feel comfortable, relaxing your shoulders, just touching base with how is your body feeling right now. And then you're going to use your hands, and we're just going to activate our hands. We can either just do this with our hands really quick. You're going to just feel, and I invite you to just close your eyes if that feels safe to you. And you're just going to feel the heat in your arms, sensations in your arms. And just take a couple of deep breaths. And then I'm going to invite you just to tap your fingertips. So just tap, tap, tap your fingertips. And this exercise is just meant to allow you to slow down and to get in touch with what sensations your hands are feeling. And as you tap, you might feel some tingliness. You might feel like pins. And then when you're ready, what you're going to do is just kind of hold your hands apart and just pay attention or bring your awareness to that sensation in between your hands. And gently, you're going to have your hands, you can gently open them and then close without touching. And it's almost like you might be feeling an invisible ball in between your palms, a magnetic sensation like pulling you in and out. And you just want to start to become aware of these sensations. And this is how we start to train ourselves to come back and connect to the body. And it was my way of connecting back. It was kind of like I was learning how to write. This was my first step of learning how to write. It's just to really just train my body that it's safe to feel the sensations I'm feeling. And you can do this for as long as you want, but something as simple as this just allows you to connect back to your body. And you're probably wondering, well, how does this help my child or help support my child? I'm going to say something that may be very, very unpopular, and that may not sit well or may even trigger you. And I'm saying this from my own personal experience. And I say this with a lot of love and with a lot of compassion. The reality for me was that I grew up with a mother that was very anxious and very depressed, and for various reasons. And being in that environment, that's what I naturally became. I became anxious and I became depressed. In fact, as I look back now, I'm starting to notice that certain ages that my mom had, I feel like I'm almost repeating some of that story, right? My mom had 4 children, I had 2, but I noticed that my depression came at a time where I think my mom started to have depression. And now when I had my daughter, who is now 6, but at the age of 2.5, started to have symptoms of anxiety. I now understand, and this is the hard truth for me as a parent, is that my daughter was just mirroring the energy that I was showing up with. She was mirroring the anxiety that I was showing up with. And as a 2.5-year-old, she doesn't have the words to express what's happening. In fact, our children up to the age of 7 are very sensitive to their environment. And so they try to communicate with us in the way they know, which is their behavior. But as parents, the behavior, we're not trained and we're not taught to look beneath the behavior. And so what I've come to understand when my daughter was in the ER, because she was having excruciating stomach pain. And as a mother, I felt so hopeless. I felt so, what can I do? I felt like I couldn't do anything to take her out of that. And I had a mentor, my energy coach at that time. And she told me this. She said, Lili, the only thing you can do is to work on yourself, work on healing your own trauma, work on being able to release the anxiety and the depression that you also have, because until you get better as a parent, your child is not going to get better. Your child is in this state because she's feeling your energy. She's feeling how you show up. And that for me was a hard truth to take in, because one, I felt like I was being blamed. I felt like I was being shamed. And I felt like, literally, like, I'm doing the best that I can. And that's what you're telling me. And it took a lot for me to sit with that. But I do realize now, after doing the work and after being coached and after being guided, that when I got better, she started to get better. She stopped biting the nails. She stopped hitting her head. She stopped the bedwetting. And I now realize that when I'm showing up with anxiety or overwhelm or I'm stressed, right? The term is called when we're dysregulated. I notice it's like she's my thermometer. She's like, oh, she's starting to hit her head, or oh, she's starting to, it's like she's telling me, I'm feeling something right now. My mom is not, calm right now or at ease. And so when I see parents and they come to me and they talk to me about their child having anxiety or depression, my very unpopular advice is to, as parents, try to work on becoming that safe space for our children, to allow them to come and share with us what they're going through. Because our students, our high school kids, are really, really stressed out. They have 6 classes. They go from one class to another to another. And each teacher has their own way of teaching, their own way of communicating, their own homework policy. You can turn it in late. You get points deducted in this class. They see 6 classes all day long, except for Wednesday and Thursday. They're coming home with a lot of stress, a lot of responsibility. And so if they come home, as my daughter would come home to me, and I'm tired, it's like we're just triggering each other. And I had to learn to be able to be much more grounded for her and for myself. And so that is what I leave you with. I don't know if there's any questions, and I don't know how that sat with everybody. And my intention is not to shame you as parents or to guilt you as parents. This is something that we're not taught. We don't go to school to become parents. We become parents the way that our parents showed us. And we repeat what was shown, what we experienced. And our children are just trying their best. They're just growing up in an environment, and they will repeat what they themselves observed and experienced, unless they become aware and conscious and start to question things that happen. And it's not I was in that state where I was so angry at my mother, so angry at her, that she it wasn't more that she didn't spend time with me. It was my own anger that she couldn't get the help she needed to deal with her anxiety and to deal with her depression so that she could be better. Because as a child, the one thing you want is to see your parent thriving, to see them doing well. And there was just so much anger in me against my mom. I realize now I get it. Like, how dare me, how it was, I'm even get angry at myself sometimes for even thinking that, because she was just trying the best that she could. I get that now, but I didn't. And so I was at a point where I was angry. And sometimes our high school kids, I think, are very angry because they're just carrying a lot with them. They're angry that their parents don't understand them, angry that their parents just are maybe pressuring them. You need to get good grades. You need to get good grades because you need to go to college. And I get that. I get that fear as a parent that we don't want our children to suffer. We want our children to have better lives than us. I get that. That's such a real thing. That's what my mom would always say. Are you happy? I'd always say, yes, I'm happy. Because if I said not, she would fall apart. So I'd be like, yes, I'm happy, Mom. She'd fall apart. I couldn't witness that. It's too hard for me as a child to see my mom be so stressed out. So work on yourself as parents. I continue to work on myself, and working on yourself doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just, there's a lot of unlearning, a lot of stuff that we took on as children. And when we get better, it's been my experience that our children also get better because they see that their parents are doing better. And you can do this with kids. You can work on trying to hear your child out. How was your day today? Try not to be, try not to offer so the top 3 things with your high school kid is, this is what I would say. 1, and I even have my little post-it here. 1, listen without judgment. Just listen, become curious, try to be present. I know our tendency as adults is to fix. How can I fix this? What can I do? We give unsolicited advice. So listen, try to be present with them. Don't offer advice. Don't try to fix them. You may get angry. I get it. But once you turn into that parent that is trying to offer advice without them asking, it's like they just shut down. I've seen it in my office where I have parents in here and student, and especially I can give you one specific example. I had a student in here that we were going to 5150 because she was trying to kill herself. And we had to call the parent in, and the parent came in. Obviously, as a mother, I've never been in that situation, but I can imagine what's going on. Why are you trying to kill? I get that, right? But as soon as the parent came in, like, the child is just like, oh, my parents, she can't hear me. She can't listen to me. She's judging me. She doesn't understand it. And it just shuts down our kids. And I know that's hard as a parent. And the reality is that until we work on ourselves, we won't be able to offer that to our kids because we're triggered. And so that's why I say, and that's why my advice is always so unpopular. It's like, you have to work on yourself so that you can hold that space for your children. So yes, thank you for sharing. Very well done and helpful. You've done a lot of work in this. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you caring enough to pass the tools. Thank you. Children do mirror what they see. Yes. Yes. And yes, I'm trying to be open and honest because I know that helps. I think I know my coach was honest with me. It hurt, but I knew that that's what helped my daughter. And you have to drop off. Yes, you're welcome. So thank you all for the info. Next Monday, I'll be going a little bit more into like how when we don't deal with the anxiety that shows up, how it kind of turns into physical disease. So if you want to return next Monday at the same time, I'll be going over that session. And then there's 2 more after that, I believe. But again, I'm just doing this to try to support parents, because I know that if I support parents, our kids will come to school in a state of being more available and ready to learn, because there's such that intimate connection between parent and student relationship. So thank you all. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat, or if you want to, yes, raise your hand. Yes, go ahead. Let me unmute you, and then you can go ahead and ask.
Hi, good morning. I have 2 students at Hayward High right now. There's a particular example that I sort of want to ask about in terms of my daughter. Yes, it's true. They do what we do, correct? So we're the role models in a way, and us creating that environment for them to be able to talk to us needs to be there, or otherwise they're going to go with other people
Yes,
or even at school. And thank you for
yes,
creating sort of that environment there for students to go and talk to someone at school.
you're welcome.
Is there any particular sort of advice to where I can give my child in terms of, she's a very kind individual, correct? And her friends look out to her. A lot of her friends share their problems with her. And so she's feeling anxious about this, correct? Anxiety. He's like, I don't know what to do. I got my own problems. I got to do good grades. Now I have to deal with my friends and I care about them. So I'm there, I'm listening, but I just don't know what to tell them. And of course, there's things that she can share with me because it's her friends, confidential things that they, among students, correct? And I understand that. My, what I could tell her at that moment was that, you know what, look out, talk to your friend, tell him that there's a space that she can go and talk to someone who knows about these issues, about these problems at school, who can actually help them. But that's obviously not solving the problem that she's still her friend and she's still going through that anxiety of other friends, problems from other friends. Any advice there in terms of how I can sort of motivate her, correct? Or have her really reach out to even someone at school and have that person talk to their friends without feeling that she's breaking that relationship, correct, as friends, confidence.
Right. And thank you so much for just having the courage to ask the question. And I commend you for being there for your daughter, for her to share with you so openly about what she's going through is just a sign that she can trust you and come to you and open up. And it sounds to me like your daughter's just, doesn't want to disappoint her friends at the end of
Right.
it, right? Like the disappointment of not being there for her friends, even though she knows she has a lot on her plate, is keeping her there. And so I think having a discussion with your daughter about ways to, I think you answered your own question, because from what I heard you say was, if your daughter can speak to her friends and
Mhm.
say, look, I care a lot about you guys. And I know that you guys are going through a lot of problems, and I want to be here to help and to support you. But I feel like I'm not credentialed, or I don't know how to help you other than to listen to you. Would you be open to, maybe let's go talk to Miss Velo, and see if we can get some extra support, and maybe we can do it in a group, and just share there so that we can be more guided. And maybe I don't, maybe I'm missing something, and there's somebody that can share something else that would help all of
Mhm.
help you. Because I know that I don't have the answers for you, and I care about you. But I want to make sure that you're getting the support that you need, and going from that angle, to see if the friends are open and willing to come talk to me or to a trusted adult at Hayward High. It doesn't have to be me. It could be somebody else that they feel comfortable already and safe enough to share that. And at the root of this is really, your daughter perhaps fearing that, they're going to be disappointed. And what does that mean to her?
Mhm.
And what I've learned, personally speaking, for me, is that every time how do I say this? She's literally abandoning herself,
Correct.
right? I mean, literally that's what's going on. She every time she chooses her friends, she's choosing to abandon herself because she doesn't want her friends to leave. And so there's a much deeper root there, like a much deeper, I don't want to say the word trauma, but there's something deeper going on there with your daughter about why she's not able to implement those boundaries and say, look, I really care about you, but I can't help you. And, as your friend, I hope that you respect that I also have these other things that I need to be responsible for. So it can be a little tricky, and it's really going to be based on what your daughter feels comfortable with, um, and where she's at right now in terms of what she can express and voice to her friends. Because it
Mhm.
seems like there might be a lot of different dynamics going on.
I would imagine. I think the need for acceptance.
Yes,
There's that.
yes,
She's a smart individual, very good grades, but in terms of having friends, it's a little hard for her to go out and be outspoken, correct? So she's very quiet. And I
yeah,
guess there's something like you said. There's more to that, and that's something we're working on
yeah.
with my wife to see how we can help and assist there.
Yeah, no, and I commend you for being here today and for just asking for other suggestions. That's a great start, because sometimes our students don't get that. And so I appreciate you sharing. And, I will say one other thing that came up for me, but not necessarily because of your situation, Mr. Sandoval,
Hmm.
is that sometimes parents often want to, like, oh, I need to take my child to therapy, or oh, my child needs to go get help. And what I've come to understand from students is that when it's brought up in that kind of form, and I'm not saying this is the case with you, is that often I think it can really even shut down our students even more, because the underlying message that some students may get is, oh, there's something wrong with me, oh, I am the one that needs to go get fixed, and so I need to go get somebody to fix me. So it's being very careful about how we word that and how we present counseling or therapy to our students, to our children. Um, because I have often had students in here say, my mom just wants to take me to a therapist. She thinks that's going to fix it. And, it's other issues, and they don't know how to express that. So they feel like it's buying more into that there's something wrong with me, and I'm, oh, and I don't know if I'm making sense there, but
No,
just
you are. You are.
share that, because a lot of our kids are like, it's an added like stress to them. It's like an added thing, an added weight on them. Um, so I'm happy to meet with your daughter. Maybe you might want to mention that you came today and heard this presentation. If she wants to, see any trusted adult. I know our counselors here, somebody mentioned, our counselors here are amazing. They have really, really amazing relationships with our students. Maybe your daughter has a really strong bond with her counselor or with the teacher, and just start there.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. That was sort of the plan, telling her that I attended this presentation and sort of this is what I think, and probably send it over to you and see if she would like to sort of talk to you about it, or at
Yeah,
least send her friends over to you. So
yeah, let her know. I mean, I would reach out to her, but I feel that it'd be more powerful coming from you and saying, look, yeah, I went to this presentation. I was just trying to get more insight. And I know that you've been sharing with me a lot about how hard it is to, I don't know, whatever words she's been using, whether, it's hard. I've heard you say that it's really stressful for you to hear your friends and the things they're going through. I'm wondering if you're open to me giving you a suggestion. So that way it's open-ended, and she feels like she's the one controlling the conversation, or like you're not pushing something on her. Um,
right,
and then going from there.
definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm wondering if there's any other questions or comments. And yes, I do see here a group or workshop with teaching these techniques for students. Sounds like a great idea. Yes, I am working on it. The principal, Mr. Seymour, and I have discussed about having some kind of workshop. We're trying to figure out the time, whether it's after school or before school or during a period, but we don't want kids to miss out and from being in their class, of where we can teach some of these skills, because I know even teachers have reached out that they're seeing a lot of increase in just students experiencing anxiety, depression, all these things that are just showing up a lot more. So we are working on that. And if you have any suggestions, ideas, I'm open to that as well. So thank you all for being here. And I don't know if there's any other questions. Awesome. Well, I'm always an email away. If any of you want to reach out more privately, you can email me, oops.us. I put my email in the chat box. You are welcome to reach out to me, and I'll be here to help in any way that I can. But thank you all for being here. I'm going to end the workshop, and I recorded it, so I will email it out to parents in case anybody who wasn't here wanted to see it, or in case you want to watch a certain piece of it again. So thank you all so much. Hope you all had a great break, and hopefully I'll see you next Monday. Thank you. Take care.